So let's start in the ACC. Fresh, tell me, is this a two-team league, or is there some other chance that someone else may win this thing?
I think there's probably 3 or 4 teams that potentially could compete for the title. There's no more divisions anymore, so it actually opens up for a lot more widespread chaos. There's we keep waiting on. We think we've been waiting on Miami to be competitive in the league for 25 years ever since they moved in. I still think they're a little bit away. They're still messed down there. But you got interesting teams like North Carolina, Pitt, who's been there, resurging programs that are trying to get going at NC State. Georgia Tech's trying to cause some noise. Clemson's been there, and then of course the historic ACC dominant team in Florida State trying to make noise, getting it back on the national level. Outside of that, there's kind of some unknowns and some rebuilding programs, but there's 4 legit teams that could play for a title. I think that's Pitt, UNC, Clemson, and Florida State. Outside of that, it would be a miracle run from someone else to really be sitting there on that championship Saturday in Charlotte playing for the title. To get there, though, I think you got to look at the 3 games I'm looking at to really going to steer the course of the season. The first one is going to be Week 4, North Carolina at Pitt. Big offense going up there. Drake May going to play Pat Narduzzi's defense up there in Pitt. That's it's 2 different styles. Very aggressive defense, playing hard-nosed football there at Pitt, and a wide-open offense, air raid style under pretty solid quarterback at North Carolina. How those 2 styles sort of mesh and clash, and could be a preview of a championship game, but it really definitely will be a deciding factor in the race and in rankings going forward. Next game I'm looking at, Clemson at NC State. Last time the Tigers went to Carter Finley there in Raleigh, North Carolina, they got beat 2 years ago. This year they're playing a different quarterback. They will not be playing Devin Leary. They'll be playing Brennan Armstrong. But it could be, NC State could be up for it again. They have the confidence. They showed up. And what kind of Clemson team are we going to get this year? Yeah, they have Garrett Riley there as the OC. They try to change things up, but Cade Klubnik didn't show us much last year in the starting role. Only 1 game, obviously, and he played partially in the title game. But where are you going to get a full season of that? How's that going to play out? That could be a nice little upset special or real chaos in the league. And then at the very end, one game that I think back in the day it was amazing, and what they really truly built the new ACC around. It hasn't lived up to it as much lately, but Miami at Florida State. It's Florida State's truly only real home game of any significance when they come down to it. Most of their tough games are on the road. If Miami has recruited well and they've kind of got something going there by the end of the year, this could be a big matchup there in Week 11 on November 11th. If not, it's just a rivalry beatdown for Florida State to add to the resume. But you kind of hope that Miami's competitive, makes that a real game, and maybe is ranked and helps out Florida State's schedule going forward. But that could be in a big rivalry game. Crazy things happen in that Florida State-Miami game. If Florida State has to kick a field goal late, I like Miami's chances of winning. But those 3 games are going to tie, in my opinion, how the league's going to navigate going forward. What do you think, Seth?
I'm going with the 3 games that I kind of looked at. And, folks, you're looking at Fresh probably cross-eyed right now and saying, if you're talking about the ACC, how did you not bring up Florida State traveling to Clemson Week 4, September 23rd? That's because we tried to pick 3 separate games. We compare notes there and kind of which games we're going to talk about. That's got to be the number 1 game on everyone's schedule this year is Florida State going to Clemson. That's going to be the biggest test for Florida State. Are they able to go to Death Valley? Are they able to get the big win over there? But there are 2 other games I feel really will make or break this season. If it's UNC traveling to NC State November 28th, the last weekend of the season here for the ACC. With that, it is Drake May versus Brennan Armstrong. 2 quarterbacks who really can light up the scoreboard there. Brennan Armstrong is transferred from UVA. They lose Devin Leary. He went over to Kentucky. But there's been a lot of talk about what you're getting in Armstrong there. Are you getting that experience? Are you getting a guy who knows the offense, is able to kind of spread the ball around, lead that offense that NC State really didn't have last year? So watch out for that game. That could be a nice offensive explosion during Thanksgiving week. And then the third game, this game's a sneaky game. We have a lot of respect for what is going up there in Pittsburgh with the Panthers, but Brian Brom going to Louisville to be the head coach there and taking them up to Pitt. He had a great offense when he was over there at Purdue. Going to Pitt, it's going to be great offense versus solid defense. Who's going to come out on top on that one? That's October 14th. Big game there. ACC is filled with interesting matchups going forward this season. So I'm really looking forward to those three. I think it's going to come down to it. I know the betting favorite right now is Florida State. Don't doubt Clemson. As much as I can't stand Dabo Sweeney, I still will put some respect on their name. Clemson's going to maybe have the best defense there. And really fresh for the ACC, for me, it's going to come down. Is defense going to win the day or offense going to win the day? If it's an offensive team, it's going to be Florida State. If it's a defensive team, watch out for the Clemson Tigers. Maybe, just maybe, the Pitt Panthers. Because, I've learned the hard way not to doubt them these last 2 years.
Well, looking at the league, there's so many great players, especially at the quarterback position. There's a lot of high-level, high-octane guys. But I think the most key player, in my opinion, is running back Trey Benson for Florida State. If he can find ways to really build off of last year and give Jordan Travis another weapon in that offense, it can make them very lethal. Also, truly want to take people's wills away running the football down their throat late in a football game, being very powerful, being very physical, because they're going to kind of need that mentality to help win ball games late and churn out victories. So looking at what he can do, I think he's going to be very critical in that overall offensive scheme for Florida State. If they can't throw, if that pass defense for Clemson, say they're playing for a title, even in the regular season, that's shutting down. How can they run the football and how can they dictate that football game? I think that's going to be critical, and Trey's going to have to do a big part of that. Surprise team, I think, from the ACC to keep an eye on, though, NC State. They had some injuries last year with Devin Leary being beat up, some guys around there. Bring in Brandon Armstrong, bring his offensive coordinator from Virginia. He's a record holder there. He still can sling it. See what they can do. They're not getting the hype this year as they got last year. Can they sort of be under the radar for a little bit and quietly get a couple teams, maybe pull up a couple upsets and put themselves in the mix? I think that's a team to keep an eye on as the season moves forward. But my ACC champion is going to be Florida State. I think the Noles get it done and live up to the hype going into the season and are a team on the cusp of a playoff spot if they don't get one outright.
So you went offense, I'm going defense, and I'm going to talk about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Can he live up to the name? Can he live up to the family name and the hype and lead that Clemson defense? That defense is going to have to lead the way to start the season. But my champion, though, is the same as you, Fresh. I got Florida State win this whole thing. I really think their offense is going to be electric this season. And I also think they have a fairly solid defense. Their schedule works out very nicely for them. Surprise team for me is the Pitt Panthers. And I think that every year we're waiting for the shoe to drop. We're waiting for the Pitt just to kind of fall off, go back to maybe 7-5. I don't think that's going to happen with them. I think that what they're doing up there, what they have as a coaching staff, what they have as player development, I think they're a solid team. I think at the end of the year, if they're sitting at 10-2 and all of us are looking, they may be in Charlotte for that ACC title game if Florida State or Clemson kind of trips up along the way. Pitt could be that team that we're sitting there because there's no divisions anymore. That Pitt is the one going to Charlotte with a real shot to win the ACC. So that's kind of my surprise team for the ACC.
But buckle up, folks. It's going to be a fun league. Upsets galore. I think that's what this conference really sees. And I got a feeling now with Clemson, the cream is starting to get back up to them. They're not by themselves anymore. And it's going to be much more wide open across the board.